as old as song.
Hi, welcome to another Flashback Friday. The featured film this week at Wayne's Movie Club is The Wiz Live, a terrific American fantasy film good for the whole family. And the featured film on Movie Club next week is The Glass Slipper, a terrific take on the Cinderella story with Leslie Caron. So it seemed only appropriate to stay in the fantasy realm for the weekend, and what better show to celebrate than Disney's Beauty and the Beast, which proved to be a major triumph for Music Theater Wichita. I think I told you growing up, I really loved my Walt Disney Company read-along, sing-along record albums. And then when I was 6 years old, living in Southern California, 17 miles from my house, they built Disneyland. Well, it was hopeless. I was sunk for life. I came to Music Theater Wichita in 1988. And at that time, we often worked with an actor named Richard White, and we were very pleased to hear that Richard had just recorded the voice for an upcoming Disney film. The movie came out in 1991, and it was Beauty and the Beast, and Richard provided the voice for Gaston. And when it opened, it was a tremendous success. It was the first animated film to be nominated for an Academy Award as Best Picture. And when it opened, the theater critic for the New York Times said, "Hooray, there's a wonderful new Broadway musical. Unfortunately, it's not in any of our theaters. It's in the movie theaters. It's Beauty and the Beast." Well, that was 1991. It didn't take very long for Disney to figure out there was more potential. So by 1994, Disney had cleaned up the Times Square area and was opening their first Broadway musical. And it was, of course, Beauty and the Beast. In the cast was our young alumni, Kim Huber, who was understudying Belle and then would take over the role on Broadway and on the national tour. And we watched in amazement as Disney became more and more of an influence in the Broadway area. And happily for us, Disney became a big influence for us. It was the summer of 2003, right after we had finished our last show, when I got a phone call from Matt Bottin and Carol Edelson at Music Theater International, the licensing house. And they asked, I know this is a big order, and you probably are going to say no, but if you could, would you do Beauty and the Beast? I said, well, I would do that in a heartbeat, but I don't think it'll ever happen because the Disney company is so protective of their properties. I mean, if you run a daycare center and you put a Mickey Mouse in the window, it's likely you may get a cease and desist order because you are not a licensed Disney company. And Matt laughed and he said, well, yeah, I know that has been the case, but Disney has now toured Beauty and the Beast in a very large, very expensive production all over the country. They've played all the big cities at least twice, all the medium cities, including Wichita. And now they're not sure they can keep that many people together on payroll to play smaller cities. And they're just wondering if regional theaters would be interested and actually could pull off this technically difficult show. They're looking for 4 theaters, and here's the criteria. The theater must be at least 90 miles away from Broadway, where the show is still running, and at least 90 miles away from Orlando and the theme park, and at least 90 miles away from Anaheim and Disneyland. Well, where better than Kansas to be 90 miles away from everything? No problem there. And they said it has to be a theater that can build its own sets and costumes, and it has to be a theater with a reputation for high quality, and you qualify. So, absolutely, we started planning Beauty and the Beast as the season finale for the 2004 summer season. Immediately, we engaged set designer Jay Branson to start creating the scenery, and the rule was we could take inspiration from the animated film, but not duplicate anything in the Broadway or touring versions, and that was fine with us. I was going to direct the show, Julie Lecce was going to do choreography, and musical director would be Thomas W. Douglas. We got a wonderful cast put together, including the aforementioned Kim Huber, recreating her Broadway role as Belle, opposite her husband, Roger Beffler, as the Beast, and their best friend, Ed Stoudenmeyer, as Gaston. They had all been in our resident company together, and they had all done this show on tour, but never together, so this was a great, fun chance for them. Also, another member of our former company who came back was Justin Robertson in the role of Cogsworth. Justin is better known today as Squiggs, the Broadway illustrator and caricaturist. Also in that cast were Roger Castellano as Lumiere and Horak as Babette, Susan Hofflander as Mrs. Potts, Karen Robb as the wardrobe, Tim Robb as Maurice, and Quentin Craig as Chip. It was really difficult to pull so many technical elements together, especially since we were putting on 4 other shows before we got to Beauty and the Beast. When we got to the dress rehearsal and our invited audience, we weren't even sure we could show them what we'd been up to. It wasn't quite ready. But somehow everybody plowed through, and it was a magical night. I'll never forget it. And when we opened on that Wednesday, it was a truly resplendent evening. The representatives from Disney who came to see it were just blown away by the high quality of what we were able to do. And those sets and costumes really put us on the map as a theater company that you could rent from. And our scenery and costumes for Beauty and the Beast have been seen all over North America, including Fairbanks, Alaska. Well, a dozen years later, we were able to get the rights to it again. And by this time, we had learned a lot more about scenery construction, and there had been a lot of improvements in lighting and fabric equipment. So we were anxious to do the show again and improve on what we had done before. Again, we were fortunate to have a wonderful cast come together. From Broadway, Catherine Charlebois as Belle. She's been back since then in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers and The Sound of Music. Thaddeus Pearson as the Beast, and he stuck around to play Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar that summer. And James Beeman as Cogsworth. He had just been seen in Nice Work If You Can Get It. Tim and Karen Robb repeated their roles. As Lumiere, we had Steve Hitchcock. As Mrs. Potts, Katie Banks. And as Chip, James Heinrichs. And our Gaston was another former company member, now a Broadway star, Johnny Stellard. So it was really fun to put together again. I again directed, Thomas Douglas again musical directed, and our wonderful choreography was by Adam Cates. A very happy occasion. This production of Beauty and the Beast is the only show in the Music Theater Wichita history where every single seat for every single performance was sold out before we opened the show. I'm so glad people liked it, and they did. It was a really triumphant experience again. So here, a few moments, be our guest to enjoy a few moments from the 2016 Music Theater Wichita production of Beauty and the Beast.